perspective now from someone with firsthand experience serving as National Security Advisor for President Trump and experience being ousted by him, John Bolton, who held that role in the first Trump administration, and as we mentioned, also served as U.S. Ambassador to the UN years earlier, which is what Mike Waltz will be nominated for. Ambassador, good to have you on. Obviously, representing the U.S. at the UN is an important job. Do you believe Vice President Vance, his claim that Mike Waltz is leaving his job not because of the signal scandal, but because the White House wanted to promote him?
Of course not. I mean, I think it really just shows how little about national security J.D. Vance knows. If you took 100 people anywhere in this country who know anything about national security, Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever, and asked them objectively, do you think National Security Advisor or UN Ambassador is the more important job? I will bet a small amount, I will bet a large amount of money that 90 out of 100, if not 99 out of 100, would say National Security Advisor is the more important job.
By the way, you have a lot of credibility on this, given that you've held both of these positions. So in your opinion, having been the U.S. Ambassador to the UN, you say the National Security Advisor is a more important job.
I don't think there's any question about it. I love being UN ambassador. Don't get me wrong, yeah. but it doesn't compare. I think what Caitlin Collins just said about Trump making the decision this morning is interesting. That was my sense that this news that Waltz was imminently on his way out. Not that he was just a dead man walking and would go maybe in August or at some point, so that nobody could claim Trump had bowed to media or Democratic political pressure, and somehow it took on a life of its own, and Trump wanted to find a way to ease the passage. They had a vacancy given Elise Stefanik's nomination had been pulled, and somebody said, maybe Trump himself, hey, why don't we give the UN job to Mike Waltz? It was also pretty clear that they had not picked a successor, whatever the state of play in Waltz's departure was. An organized White House would announce the successor immediately. And the fact that they didn't have a successor showed they weren't ready to make the announcement. And to have Marco Rubio serve on an interim basis is just absolutely bizarre. I mean, compare this with Richard Nixon in the depths of Watergate, almost about to lose his job. He loses William Rogers as Secretary of State. He nominates Kissinger because he knows he can get Kissinger confirmed. There's only one Henry Kissinger, and then serving through Nixon's resignation. What kind of look is that for the Trump administration?
I mean, also, Lara Loomer, who's a MAGA influencer, had been in the Oval Office with a list of people she thought the president should fire. A number of Mike Waltz's people around him were part of that group who actually got let go before this. I don't know if this is a victory for her as well. You've been critical both of Waltz but also Pete Hegseth as defense secretary. I mean, Waltz at least has a background in what he was working on as national security advisor. Does it surprise you that Hegseth, who actually shared sensitive information on Signal about an imminent military operation, is still in that position?
Well, I think he's a dead man walking too. I think they don't want to have two go at the same time, so I think Hegseth has more time. But we don't know exactly what influence Lara Loomer had in Mike Waltz's departure, but if she had any, this really is the inmates running the asylum. I mean, the notion that a person like that can have any influence over presidential personnel decisions.
Well, I mean, she wanted the NSA.
Just extraordinary.
The NSA head out, and he was let go.
Yeah, that's extraordinary too. I mean, I think this is a point where I disagree with some of the analysts on what was the real cause of Waltz going, because I think it also says something important about Trump. People say with great confidence, oh, well, Waltz wasn't in tune with the president, and that's why he had to go. Well, who hired Waltz? I mean, who knows who's in tune with the president better than the president? This shows Trump has no philosophy, no national security strategy, doesn't do policy. He hired Waltz and many other people because he expected fealty from them. And when Waltz exposed Trump to political liability because of the Signal group chat, that was all Trump needed. That was not sufficient fealty. That's what the cause of the departure is.
This is par for the course. I mean, this is exactly what you experienced, what you saw during the first administration in terms of how Trump makes decisions, particularly with involving national security, foreign policy.
Yeah, these are random neuron flashes. This is not Trump
Wow.
playing three-dimensional chess, as his
Wait,
advocates
random
say.
neuron
This
flashes?
is Trump.
Wow.
Yeah, this is Trump playing regular chess, one move at a time, and no further ahead than that.
That's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, well, I must say it was a struggle to try and keep the wheels of government moving in the Trump administration. That's why I compared it to living inside a pinball machine rather than making coherent national security policy.
Ambassador John Bolton, thanks for being on. Perspective now from former Middle East and North Africa coordinator of the National Security Council, Brett McGurk, who served in senior positions under the last 4 presidents, including President Trump during the first term, and former senior advisor of President Obama and CNN chief political analyst David Axelrod. So, David, does the vice president's claim that Waltz is being promoted? I mean, you had Ambassador Bolton, who's been the U.S. ambassador to the UN, saying it's not a promotion. Does it pass the laugh test?
It does not. I think it reflects the political need they had to, the president dispatched so many national security advisors in the first term that I don't think they wanted to concede that this was what it was, but it is. And, frankly, I haven't heard the president elevate the position of the United Nations ambassador recently. He doesn't think that much of the United Nations. They want basically Waltz got waltzed out of town to New York and out of the action. But I want to say one other thing, Anderson. Listening to John Bolton discuss this, the job of a national security advisor, and Brett is much more tuned to this than I am, but is to organize the national security process, to bring together a consensus among the various national security agencies. But the word process and Donald Trump just that doesn't go together. And it's whoever is in that job, and we'll see how Secretary Rubio fares in the interim, has to respond to the firing neurons, as Ambassador Bolton just said. That is really disconcerting because you want a considered process. You want agencies to be working together and coordinated. And if you can't do that, it puts the nation at risk, I think.
Brett, I mean, as I said, you've served in foreign administrations. Can you how do you read this whole situation?
I think, Anderson, I was on your program a month ago after Waltz's staff was fired, his handpicked staff was fired. I think I said it's really untenable for him to stay in the position.
You did.
If you can't protect your own staff, you just don't have the authority. This is one of the most important jobs in Washington. You are basically, it's not, and it's completely different than the Secretary of State job. I want to get to that because this face-saving switcheroo, and with Rubio becoming the National Security Advisor, makes no sense. But this job is not just diplomacy. It is the integration of intelligence, military, international economics. It is running the entire national security apparatus and facilitating the agenda of the president. It is so important. And we're at a time now, this idea that this was maybe planned or a promotion, look at the national security crises here that are starting to pile up. First of all, the president in about 10 days is heading on his first multi-day trip overseas to the Middle East. We have a crisis with 2 nuclear-armed powers, Pakistan and India, right now. Secretary of State Rubio was on the phone just yesterday with the Pakistan Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister of India. You have the Yemen bombing campaign. We're now in day 50, which the Signalgate kind of exposed the internal debate about that. Who is coordinating that? Not only the military application, but what is the political objective? You still have the Gaza hostage crisis. You have Iran negotiations ongoing, the back end of which, if they fail, is a potential military strike against Iran. And the Secretary of Defense yesterday, Hegseth, just tweeted a real threat against Iran, which Trump backed up today. So, what's on the agenda is massive. It is important. This is our national security at stake. You need a strong national security advisor. You cannot be the Secretary of State and the national security advisor at the same time. That does not work. I'll say one thing. Secretary of State Rubio has a very good deputy in Chris Landau. Perhaps he can delegate to him as he takes on the duties of this new position. But you can't do both. It's not 50 years ago. It's not Kissinger, as Ambassador Bolton said.
Yeah.
So they either have to get somebody in place in that job soon, or Rubio has to decide that he's really going to be the national security advisor and delegate to his deputy, because this can't work.
David, the Defense Department Inspector General, by the way, is now looking into the second signal chat that Defense Secretary Hegseth took part in, which included his wife, his lawyer, and his brother. To you, as who worked in the Obama White House, does it make sense that Marco Rubio can be both Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor? As Brett was saying, this is not, the 60. This is not the 1960s. It's not the Nixon administration.
Well, it didn't work that well then either, and Kissinger was a unique character. But one of the reasons it can't work is the job of the National Security Advisor is to mediate between the viewpoints of the various national security agencies. That's one of the jobs. If you represent one of the major agencies as the Secretary of State, can you be an honest broker in those discussions? Because the State Department may have a completely different view of a situation than the Pentagon does.